I always want to get this volume down. I'll never live down the one episode where it was blasting and I had to use captions just so people could understand what the heck I was saying. All right,
Live
guys,
and
super
learn.
excited.
Live and learn.
Exactly. Super excited for this episode this week, guys. As you already know, this podcast, Unfuck, Turning Pain into Purpose. I'm really excited to have my brother Justin on today, and we're going to dive into a quick intro with him. But we were just praying right before we jump on here, as I like to do with every guest, because it just drops me into my heart, drops me into my soul with my guests and my opportunity to just serve you guys. So I really hope that you guys take something away from this today. This is intended to be an opportunity to serve you and the journey that you're on, and the opportunities that we've had to walk through, some of the challenging things, some of the exciting things. We just want to give you guys the opportunity to take that away and plug it into your life in whatever way it serves you. So I hope you hear something today that supports you on your journey. But with no further ado, I do want to go ahead and introduce my brother Justin. So this is Justin Croskery. We've known each other for 5 years.
It's
been a while.
2019, so 4 years.
4 years
Feels like eternity. In a good way.
In
a good way.
Yeah. But we met through a really powerful experience that you guys have heard, me share and talk about with other guests on the show, which is a transformational leadership program. But we really just vibed right from the get-go. We've been really good friends. We've gotten into business together and just really have supported each other immensely. And I think that's one of my favorite parts. And we'll dive into this is, I met him as a coach, right? Like I was like a leader, kind of like a leadership role to him when we met, right? And since then we've swapped those roles so many times in our relationship. And that's the thing I love, when you're willing and open to be humble and just be a student of life. Like when I need to be the student, I'm the student. And when Justin needed to be the student, he gets to be the student. And it's just like this really awesome, cohesive relationship. So I'm just super grateful to have him on. He's an entrepreneur, crushing it in his life and his job, or in his career, as an entrepreneur, starting his business years ago, and has just learned so many amazing things. And I'm sure he'll share some of that stuff with us today as well. But with no further ado, I'll kind of let Justin introduce himself and just share a little bit about like who you be, and like what your vision for your life is. And then we'll kind of dive into what got you to where you are right now.
Totally, man. And first of all, thank you for having me on here. I've been seeing the episodes and been loving it and just been really excited to get on here. So my name is Justin Croskery. I'm a courageous, authentic, passionate leader. Let's go. My vision for the world and for my life is really to allow people to see that, as we have learned, life is happening for you, not to you. And I'm sure we'll get into it today, but every single circumstance that you may have a negative connotation with in your life is actually, I believe, a gift to you. And, my vision and my hope is that when I speak, I can allow people to see that so that they can, when you do that, you're actually really changing the past, which is pretty cool, that you can shift your past by the way that you view it. So, I really want to leave this planet a better place than I found it. I want to allow people to have true freedom, mentally, emotionally, when it comes to their physical health as well. That's what I do. And I just want to be a good human, I want to help people. Like if I can help people, that lights me up. That gets me inspired. If I help one person on here and you reach out to me on Instagram, that would make my whole, 2023, so, and that's, at times when I take risks and I say things that maybe might get people upset or might trigger them, I'm like, it's not for you, it's for, or maybe it is for you if you look at it that way, if you're looking at the, whatever the trigger is, but it's really for that one person, and I think if you can share whatever's on your heart for that one person, you can start to transform yourself and impact, thousands and if not millions. And so that's what I want to do, continue to learn and grow with myself, and then help others get what they want, so I can get what I want. And what I want is to help others get what they want. So it's, a cycle, which I love. I'm addicted to.
Absolutely, dude. And I think it's cool that just hearing you talk about that, like about how like saying something that might upset somebody or trigger them or whatever. It's so cool hearing you just speak that like so authentically. Cause I remember when we met that like you had that in you, but you weren't exercising that. And as the years have gone on and even specifically, I'll just speak from my own personal experience. I don't want to talk about anybody else's. Like, dude, you have just continuously interrupted. If I'm like talking to you and I'm in some bullshit story, like you have just been very courageous in the sense of like, I'm going to interrupt this because I love you and I care enough about you to be honest, kind of deal. And that's,
Yeah.
you've lived by that. And I appreciate that characteristic and that value in you very much, because I think that's the one thing that is missing the most in the world is people that are just willing to just say whatever gets to be said to create that eye-opening experience and shift the perspective, as you said, kind of rewrite the story that we've created about the circumstances so we can have a different result, right?
Yeah. And that's been my biggest breakthrough, to be honest. I've actually been telling people the past couple of weeks because it's really, I just finished 75 hard, this,
Mm-hmm.
and that has radically, I'm still feeling what that has done for me. And one thing that has done is it has allowed me to kick my nice guy to the curb about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, where I finally am starting to realize how much I was letting myself falter because I wasn't honoring my word, and then how much I was actually hurting other people because I was being the nice guy.
Yeah.
One of my mentors, and you know him very well, Ray Higdon, right? Nice stands for nothing inside of me cares enough.
Mm.
And I realized that I was being selfish when I feel like my desire is to be the most selfless, but I was being selfish because I was more worried about what that person would think about me, upsetting that person or whatever it may be. And so I wouldn't share with them what they got to hear,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there's people that haven't shared with me what I get to hear. Right. But at the end of the day, when I can care more about that person and their transformation and them getting to where they want to be rather than staying where they're at and it's not a place that they want to be, then I can move forward and be selfless rather than selfish. So,
Totally.
yeah, it's been a big breakthrough for me, not being the nice guy. And that's how I've been for a majority of my
Yeah.
life. It's like, I don't want any confrontation. I'm sure a lot of that comes from, my past, trying to keep everything just cool,
Yeah.
collected, not
Well,
wanting to
the
upset
crazy
anyone.
part about that is like, we think like, oh, like people want us to be nice, right? Like that's what we think. And then, we might be nice and it's cool, like everything's copacetic, but like, and whatever unfolds from that relationship or interaction. But the reality is when you do care, nothing inside of me cares enough. When you do care enough and you're direct but fair, and you interrupt somebody's bullshit conversation that they're having with themselves that's keeping them living small or stopping them from taking their life to the next level or making a decision that's going to serve them or serve someone else, then all of a sudden the idea that you need to be nice is no longer really in your mind or the person that you're speaking to, because they will have more respect for you and not care about niceness when you are being loving enough to interrupt their conversation that they're having. Their perception isn't, oh, was he being nice or was he being mean? Because if you're being caring enough to be honest, it doesn't come from a space of being mean. It's not like you're being an
Yeah.
asshole as much as you're being somebody who cares enough about them to express the truth.
Yeah. Where's the intention from? Is the intention to make someone better, right? Or is the intention to make someone worse? If you're making someone worse, then obviously you're coming from, not the best intention. But if your intention is to make someone better, and that's what I continue to remind myself when I'm like, my limiting belief in my head will go, whoa, whoa, Justin, don't say that. You don't want to upset them. And I'm like, well, if I say this, does it have the opportunity to make them better? And if so, then yes, I'll say it,
Yeah.
So I think the intention and the come from is what really matters. And as long as you have that good, authentic intention, and someone maybe does get upset, you can hold your ground and know, or rather, I'll speak for me, I can hold my ground in knowing that my intention was pure, that my intention was from my heart,
Yeah.
and triggers are an interesting thing. I deal with them all the time, and they're fun when you
Yeah.
start to understand them and you start to learn more about you and your emotional intelligence. Then life becomes very interesting. And
Oh yeah.
you know but the duality of it is pretty interesting at the same time too. It can be very fun, but at the same time it can also be uh difficult,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think one of the big things too, and I kind of want to segue into kind of our like where you started your journey at, what kind of created who you were, and in turn allowed you to transform into who you be. But when it comes to awareness, that's like one thing that we'll dog ear and touch on a lot. But that's one of the things that really impresses me about you. And I always like to kind of highlight certain things, especially for listeners, because not everybody's going to have the same level of awareness as like Justin does, because he's been doing this work for a super long time. But that being said, I think that's the thing, is like having the emotional awareness of like, okay, what's the underlying conversation that I'm having right now, and what is that serving? Why am I having it? What's the intent? Like, what is the intention of my ego right now? What is it trying to protect me from, or whatever it is? And then having enough like foresight to be like, okay, cool. Like, I know why this is coming up, but that thing doesn't serve me or the person I'm interacting with. So I'm going to replace that with this way of being, or this thought, or this action kind of deal. And having first, the awareness has to be there consistently enough to see, oh, it's coming up, and then practicing the disciplines of plugging in new tools that created a better result for yourself.
Totally.
So,
yeah. And awareness is key. One little thing I'll touch on, because I know you want to dive into some other areas, was, I was speaking with a group the other day, and one of them was talking about how their ego gets involved with a lot of their conversations, and he was getting upset because he doesn't want his ego to be there. And he's like, yeah, but I've been trying to change and I just can't change. Well, here's the thing for anyone listening. And, like James mentioned, I've been working on myself and personal growth, like specifically for probably about 10 years now, but really my whole life has been personal growth classroom. And so what I let him know was, hey, just your awareness of it is everything. If you're just aware of your bad tendencies, there's no better place to start, because there's so many people that aren't aware of those tendencies that hold them back. And I truly believe that life is, the bad things that happen to you, the good things that happen to you, however those look, because those are subjective to you, are death by 1,000 paper cuts. They're done through the little things that we do each day. But if you're aware of those little things and you can catch them, then you can start to shift them. It's kind of like, I always do this with my fingers. It's kind of like you're a DJ, it's like tuning music. You want to fine tune that. So
yeah. And sometimes it's not as drastic of a, they talk about like when you're steering a boat, you don't need to move the propeller, or the sails or whatever, a crazy angle. One little degree will set you over the course of time in a completely different direction. So sometimes we overcorrect, we just need to be, okay, how can I finely tune this little thing in my life to create the direction and the path in which I want to head down,
Totally.
Cool, man. Well, let's talk about, pre 10 years ago, right before, what was the reason for needing to do the self work? So, I mean, I know you had an interesting upbringing. Is something that I definitely want to dive into. I mean, significantly different than mine in many different ways. And so, I'm sure a lot of people out there can relate, and a lot of people will also be able to take something away that can't necessarily relate. So, I don't want to, misspeak, but I know you were raised by, was it you're a single mom for a long time,
Single
or what
mom.
was it?
Yep.
Yeah. And she suffered from mental illness, and I believe drug addiction as well.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. She was undiagnosed bipolar until I was about 20.
Okay.
So
Talk to me a little bit about like what that was like experiencing, growing up with a mom that was, suffering with her own, like fighting her own demons in that space.
yeah. So my mom had me when she was 22. My dad and her, I really haven't gone into the conversation a whole lot. Like, they dated, but I don't think it was ever serious. I don't believe they ever really intended to get married or anything like that. And my dad had his own things that he was going through. He never graduated from high school, never got his GED. He was taking care of his brother, who was a quadriplegic, got into a car accident, and his parents, my grandparents on my dad's side, put him into a home. And my dad essentially was like, my brother, he was young. I think he was like 25, 26 at the time. He was about to go professional in motocross, which is what got me into it. But my dad was like, my brother does not belong in a home with a bunch of old people. He gets to live his life. And my grandparents weren't willing to do that. So my brother went in, literally like kidnapped him, or adult napped him from the rehab center that he was in. and took him home. And long story short, my uncle was an incredible man. Started his own business from his wheelchair, went to college, got his degree in business from his wheelchair, taught me how to ride a dirt bike from his wheelchair. So with my dad leaving high school, like senior year, to go deal with that, and then he got into woodworking, carpentry, and became a contractor. And that's kind of the road that he went down and continued to go down. So he was always dealing with his own demons and different things like that. He had his own fair share of addictions, mainly like alcohol, but also some other drugs as well. But my mom, she was like my best friend. It really wasn't a mother figure. So like I said, she had me when she was 22. For the first couple of years of my life, a lot of that time I spent with my grandmother. And then when I believe I was like 3 or 4, my mom met someone on Catalina Island, and we moved over to Catalina Island here in California. And that was pretty cool because, as like a kindergartner, I pretty much owned the island. I rode my bike wherever I wanted, did whatever I wanted, knew all the people because it was kind of like that local town feel and vibe. And my mother was a bartender on and off with jobs. She really couldn't hold them. And then so was, the man that she was dating at the time. And then I got blessed with a baby sister. And my mom had my sister with that man. And I got to name her. She's absolutely incredible. She's about to have her first child here in November. On my birthday is her due date, which is pretty cool.
That is
considering
awesome.
I got to name my sister. Yeah. And so I'm really excited about that. And then during that time on Catalina, that's where I started to see a lot of the alcoholism. Not so much the drugs. It was mainly just drinking and alcoholism, some, anger issues, but it wasn't really taken off like it was later in my life. And then we moved to Bullhead City, Arizona when I was 7 years old, right across the river from Laughlin. There's a lot of, meth and just like really bad, hard drugs in that area.
It's a rough area.
And it's a very rough area, and not a whole lot to do other than be in the river, and moved out there with my sister, my mom, her dad, and then things kind of, continued to, my mom and my stepdad at the time were butting heads and just wasn't working out. He was bartending and gambling. She was bartending, but missing, work and losing jobs left and right, going from place to place. And then they split up. And it was about like 7, 8 years old. It was when we moved out there that I think my mom really started to get into other different types of drugs and hang out with the wrong crowd. There's one time I didn't know it until later, but I was just hanging out at a friend's house, and there she was smoking a crack pipe. I had no idea what a crack pipe was then. I was 7, 8 years old. I just thought, mom's hanging out with friends. And she would have friends over at the condo that my grandparents, were essentially bought and let her stay in. And she would, have me, hey, take your sister upstairs. We're going to get high. And like, I'm 8, 9 years old. I didn't really know what that was. Like, mom wanted me to go babysit my sister. But I think it was through those drugs, just getting unstable when it comes to our hormones, when it comes to all different, aspects of mentality of everything. And then drinking, hanging around the wrong crowd, not holding a job, not having money. We would constantly be struggling with sometimes electricity be on, sometimes it'd be off. Sometimes I'd go in the shower and the water would turn on. Sometimes it wouldn't. We were, my sister and I, we went to like a private elementary school, and we were known for having lice, which is one of the most embarrassing things ever because kids didn't want to be around us. Why? Because their parents were like, don't hang around these two because they have lice. And there's just stuff you don't want to deal with when you're a kid and you don't understand, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then there'd be times where we'd be at school and we would go to an after school program that my mom never paid for. I think they just understood kind of what we were going through. And the principal was kind of like, all right, we'll just, let this happen. And then after a number of times, my mom wouldn't show up to pick us up. And so there was a handful of times cops would drive us home. And then, through elementary school, I was missing probably in between like 20 and 45 days. I actually have a report card I was looking through, and it's like every single semester, Justin's a great student. He means well, but he's, missing way too much school. Justin's a great student. He tries really hard, but he's missing all his homework and misses too much school. And it was like every single semester. And I was like F's and D's and C's, and this was in elementary school where it should be, consistently A and B. If you're showing up, like, you just really got to do it, right? And so that was kind of what was going on. Because of that going on, I was held back in second grade. And I think this is actually a realization I had recently. I haven't shared with you, but I think that's where I made up, because I'm born in November. So I already started school late, and then I got held back. So I graduated high school when I was 19. So throughout my whole childhood, I was always the older kid. And the story I created in my head was, I'm stupid, I'm not smart, I'm always the older one, right? And that's the story I played in my head for so long. And I didn't realize this until it was actually like something that came to me probably like a month and a half ago. And so things aren't going right with my mom and my stepdad. They split up, and then she meets a new guy. And in between, with my mom and her mental illness and the drugs and alcohol and everything, she was just very promiscuous. So every new man that came in was like, all right, this is going to be my dad, And then a month, a couple weeks, maybe sometimes, depending on the guy, they were out and a new one was in. And so here I was thinking that I would have this father figure, and then they would leave, And so I think that's where I began the story of that I created as well, was like, I'm not worthy,
Yeah.
And then my mom met my brother's dad, and he was a good guy, but again had his own struggles and his own challenges. And I think he got her a little bit more sober when it came to like the hardcore drugs. But they dated for a little bit, and then I had my little brother, and he's awesome as well. He's in the Marines over in Japan right now. Super proud of him. And then they split up too. And so he would come around every once in a while, if we were in Arizona. So you know what Arizona's like, right? You got the super hot summers, and then in winter it's absolutely freezing. And so like there was a couple of times where electricity would be off, and he'd come, bring us some logs for our fire so we can heat the fire and just like heat the place so we wouldn't be absolutely freezing,
Yeah.
And so through that time, I was pretty much raising my sister, who's 5 years younger than me, and then my brother, who's 10 years younger than me. My mom would kind of go on benders and be just out of the home for, sometimes, mainly it would just be a couple hours, but sometimes it would be like a day or two. And when I was about 10, that's when things got really, really heated up. Where my mom would just lose it on us. And I think this is where, as I mentioned earlier in this podcast, where I always wanted to keep things kosher. Like, if you know me, for the most part, I'm a pretty chill, laid back guy. Like, I can get passionate if I want to get passionate and get all excited, but for the most part, I just want things to be chill. And the reason being that I've kind of learned is because, one moment my mom would be my best friend, and we'd be absolutely like having a great time, having fun, wrestling or doing different things like that. Listening to music, No Doubt was like one of her favorite bands. And then just be rocking out. And then the next moment, she would be grabbing my sister by her hair, and she'd be throwing me around. She'd be hitting me, just yelling, screaming, loud noises, throughout the house. And when you're just young, and then there'd be multiple times, police would come to our doorstep because of domestic violence. And I would just see my mom and whoever the man was at the time just going after it. And there was one time I'm at the top of the stairs, and this one guy who, probably did some steroids back in the past, shorter dude, and they were going after it. And I saw him just sock my mom in the face. And that was like one of the, hardest moments for me to see, because here I was like 9 years old, and this dude's, pretty big, taking steroids, and I can't do anything.
Yeah. It's like
and
feeling
so that's kind of like,
kind of sets in.
Yeah, totally set in. Yeah. And so things just got to a point, there was a little portion in there where my mom wouldn't pick us up. And I said earlier, like, cops would bring us. So eventually, I went to through the foster care for a little bit, stayed with a couple families. One was luckily I had a great experience with that. One was absolutely phenomenal. It was during like Halloween, and they dressed me up, and they had, some really cool video games, like the arcade games in their house, and a couple young kids I got to hang out with and get to know, and they treated me really well. And that was awesome. And I go back to my mom's house at the time, and she's all excited. She had some like balloons and stuff to kind of welcome me back, being back home after she got me back. And she's like, how was it? I was like, it was great. I loved it. And that's not what you wanted to hear,
Oh,
you
shit,
know?
yeah.
And, but yeah. And then, things just got to a point where that continued. And there was like a weekend where I was watching my brother and my sister. My brother, mind you, he was born in 99, and this was going on around 99, 2000. And, so I'm taking care of pretty much like a 6 month old baby, 6 month
Wow.
to a year. And, things getting crazy. I was like, I got to do something. My grandmother, bless her heart, she would always come out and visit probably like once a month. She was in Southern California, and she would just come out, take us to the casino, take us to the kids camp that was at casino, or go do some other fun stuff. She would just like get us out of the house, which we were pretty much stuck in the house. No cable TV. We had like a box of movies that we would just watch on reruns. So it was a good way for us to kind of break free. And finally, I, got up some change, went to the gas station down the street, put it in because I think our phone was not paid for. So we didn't have a phone at the time. And so put some coins into the payphone. We don't even have those nowadays. You might not know what those are if you're listening to this. And called my grandmother and just was like, hey, things are not good. You got to come out here. And she came out, and we kind of snuck out with her without my mom kind of knowing, my sister and I. And they had the conversation, and it was, we were spending the summer with my grandmother out here in Southern California, and my aunt happened to be there, and my aunt and my cousins. And every time we'd be at my grandparents' house and my aunt and uncle would turn the corner, I'd get like so excited because they were awesome and, super, super loving, and had my cousins who I got along with very well. And so we're all sitting at the table and kind of discussing what's going on. And this is my mom's sister. And, I'm just sharing everything that we've been going through. And my aunt, they're first like, what are we going to do? Kind of my grandmother and aunt trying to figure it out. And they're like, well, you can come and live with us, Justin. Brittany can go live with her dad, and Colin can go live with his dad. And this is crazy that I even thought this way when I was 10 years old, making these types of decisions. But I was like, I'd rather live with my mom, all of us together, or live with one other person altogether. Without hesitation, without talking to her husband, my aunt goes, do you guys want to come live with us? And that was like the moment that everything shifted. So I didn't even go back to Arizona. Didn't tell any of my friends what was going on. Didn't have the opportunity to say bye to my friends, I'd grown up with for a few years out there. And moved in with my aunt and uncle. It was just my sister and I. And then that was summer of 2001. And then that December, that Christmas, my mom's brother came in from Vegas, grabbed my little brother, and brought him to us during Christmas. And so my brother was a little Christmas present. And we moved in with my aunt, uncle, and their 3 kids. And yeah, that's kind of, and then that was 2001, and I've been with them ever since. Absolutely incredible human beings. And I think the coolest part is, although we're cousins, we all call each other siblings.
Yeah.
And I I know a lot of families, and I sincerely don't know of another family that gets along like we do. And I think it is because of the challenges that we've gone through. And there was no hesitation on my cousin's end of like, well, this might take a little bit of my connection to my own mother and father. It was like, yes, no, we'll definitely open up our home to Justin and Britt.
That's awesome. So, I mean, that's I it's funny because I know like a lot of your story, but it's just really powerful to hear the timeline. I mean, I just put myself in like, I reflected what I was doing when I was 9 years old. Like, I mean, and don't get me wrong, like I had my own stuff as a kid, right, with my dad, and my mom was epileptic, so I dealt with like a bunch of my mom's struggle with with having seizures and stuff at a young age, and plenty of other things. Lost my grandma when I was 13. Like I have my own stuff, but you
Mm-hmm.
know when you have an opportunity to look at somebody else's journey and see like how quickly, similar to my wife, like she had to grow up really fast, you had to grow up really fast, like to do take grow like raising your 6 month old brother at 9. That's a tall order. So I mean, I heard you talk a little bit about like the helplessness of being able to support your mom when she's getting abused and stuff, but I mean, what I know, I hear you talking about gratitude for your aunt and, and the family and stuff. But I mean, was that exactly how you felt at that time? Did you have like a lot of fears or like insecurities about that situation, or was it more just like you were in the attitude of gratitude solely now that you've been here? Like, was there like this abandonment feeling, or like, I mean, what was kind of going on in your little 10-year-old head at that point in time?
Yeah. There was it wasn't I wouldn't say gratitude per se. I think because I was just so young, I didn't really know what gratitude was. It was more
Yeah.
so like I'm super excited
Yeah,
because
I get to go live with my aunt.
just
Like, this is so much better, kind of
yeah,
thing.
just like the situation I was in. I mean, I told you with like the electricity, water, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff going off, but also I'd open up the fridge or the freezer and there'd be like these like fruit flies and stuff eating our food. And
Yeah.
so like we didn't really have food, and if we did, it was probably expired.
Hmm.
And then my mom really didn't do laundry, so we literally had a 2-car garage, and there was probably 1,000 pounds of laundry that had been sitting there for literally so long. When my grandparents would come over and we'd do bunch of laundry, we'd lift it up and moss would have eaten the bottom parts because it'd be like 10 inches high of laundry,
Yeah.
and everything was a mess. And unless my mom went on, I don't know for sure, but all of a sudden she would clean the house in like no time and be
Yeah.
spotless. So we can all, I'm sure, realize what that was.
I'm a recovered crystal meth addict, so I would say that may or may not have played a role in that.
Yeah, yeah. So at that time, I mean, I could vividly remember it, pulling into the driveway and the garage opening, and my cousin standing there in the garage, and I'm just pumped. I'm like, yes.
Hmm.
Um, and I was excited, to be honest. I was just really
Cool.
excited to get out of that situation, get my brother out of that situation, or my
Yeah.
sister and brother out of that situation, and get to a different spot,
Yeah.
But it wasn't
What?
easy because
And I mean, and not to, I don't know, not to like over glorify your aunt and your uncle or anything like that. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but like your uncle has done very well in his life. He's very successful, and so like the living situation that you're going into was significantly different. It wasn't just like,
yeah,
hey, this is a cush, okay, living, like we're all going to cram into this little tiny 2-bedroom house. Like they're bringing us in, like, you're going into a much, much different experience, So as a kid, I'm sure, to open a fridge up that's full of food and full of, probably very healthy food, was a totally different experience for you as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, I went from a place that the community was like where I lived. Luckily, my grandparents bought a nice condo, but the inside was not that great, and the surrounding areas weren't that great. But I went from our electricity and water being shut off to behind some gates where everyone's driving Mercedes, BMWs, Bentleys, different things like that. So it was a
Yeah.
dramatic difference.
Yeah.
So that was really exciting for me,
Totally.
at the time. And then for my aunt, I definitely she went from I just acknowledge her so much because she went from having let's see, it was 2003, so she went from having an 8-year-old to all of a sudden having an 11-year-old. Like that's a big jump. There's a lot of differences that happen, especially
Yeah.
right as I'm going into puberty, and she had to figure out how to deal with that, and I had to figure out how to deal with it as well. And I think also that time that I had with my mom where I had to be the adult, now I was
Hmm.
like, freedom. Like I don't have to worry about
I
that.
could
I
be a
can like
kid for a
relax
little
and just
bit.
be a
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah.
100%. And that also I think is, if I fast forward a little bit, kind of what bit me in the butt when it came to college. Because my aunt was dealing with, like, now her oldest went from, as I mentioned, 8 to 11, and she had to try and figure out how to, like, how am I going to raise this man, so that he's a good example for his siblings.
Hmm.
And so, she was like, if I wanted to spend the night at a friend's house, she had to talk to the mom. She was always looking out for us, right?
Yeah.
Always looking out for me. But it was just like, I felt overbearing. So when I went to college, I was like, let's go. That was my freedom
Yeah.
to just let loose. And that's where I really got into a lot of, alcoholism that was really just suppressed emotion from when I was younger that I didn't have an outlet to really deal with. And I didn't
Yeah.
know what the emotions meant to me.
So do you feel like you moved through, like, like pretty much junior high and high school upon moving in with your aunt and your uncle? Do you feel like that there was a lot that went unprocessed through that time, and you just kind of like absorbed into this new life and just didn't really talk about your mom situation or address the that whole ordeal, and just kind of like it never existed. And then like as you moved on into college and your early adult life, like those things kind of came back up for you.
Yeah, sports are a big thing with our family, so I think a lot of that was probably mitigated. Those emotions were mitigated because we were so busy.
Mm-hmm.
I played three organized sports, but then I was always going out and riding my BMX bike and
Mm-hmm.
jumping and always staying active. So that, movement was probably moving those emotions and not having them be stuck. Um, but when I stopped doing that, after high school, I stopped playing football, basketball, and lacrosse. It was more so just for fun. And then that's when it started to kind of come up, and I
Mm-hmm.
started to notice it. Maybe even a little bit of high school, because then I started getting in my head a little bit, and um, the self doubt started coming in and things of that nature. But it was mainly after, and it was really in college and post college, I started to feel those feelings come up. And I actually just had my first therapist about a year ago. When I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking to the guy, he's like, "Well, tell me your story," and I shared with him a lot of
You're
what
like, how
I
long do we have?
shared with you here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Have you ever seen a counselor?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Have you ever seen a therapist?" No. He's like, "That's pretty shocking to me." I don't think we really knew. And
Yeah.
to be honest, my aunt and uncle provided me with a freaking incredible life. So
Yeah.
I don't think I really had to deal with that until later. And then it started bubbling up, and I'm like, "Whoa, what's this?" Not
Yeah.
necessarily knowing how to deal with that.
Totally. So what were some of those challenges? I mean, just so some of the people that are listening can relate to, the inner dialogue, and and let's talk let's speak into it from a I haven't maybe some of the listeners haven't had the level of insight and transformational work, and so like how were they outwardly expressed, in your college years? Like what was the behavior behind the thought that was creating the result for you in your life at that point in time?
Yeah, a lot of it was social anxiety.
Okay.
So a lot of it, especially in college, I wanted to make sure I was drunk so then I can not have to worry about what anyone thought about me or what I thought about myself.
Yeah, social lubricant.
So like the drunker I got,
Yeah.
exactly. The drunker I got, then the more free I could be, which is not what happened. Then I would do the stupid stuff because um, I would drink to the point of literally blacking out. That was my MO, you know? And so that really, affected me because I would just, I would just be at different place and they'd be like, "Hey, what's up, Justin?" I'd be like, face would go beet red, didn't even know who it was because I was so intoxicated the night before whenever I met them that I didn't even remember it.
Yeah.
And then I got into smoking weed. And that was like second semester of college, and I smoked weed every single day, multiple times throughout the day. And again, either one of those, all it was like I wanted to escape, but I didn't realize it was an escape at the time.
Hmm.
Like, why did I want to smoke weed? Because I wanted to feel good. Well, I didn't realize I didn't feel good, right?
Yeah.
I just knew that I wanted to smoke weed. I didn't realize I wanted to feel good, so I drank. I just thought I wanted to drink so I could feel good, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I just wasn't aware. As I said earlier, like awareness is a key. So if you can just be aware that, oh, I'm drinking or oh, I'm grabbing whatever it may be
Hmm.
because I want to feel good, you're like so much further along the battle than
Yeah.
just that
Yeah. When
awareness
you're drinking
because
and
I
you're just like,
was not
this
aware.
works, like, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So yeah, and then
the big thing for folks that are struggling with any sort of destructive behavior. They don't understand that the destructive behavior is filling a void or masking something. It's just a behavior that they are participating in. There's nothing to fix
and
at
it's
that
so
point.
much
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so much easier, right? Like it's not fun dealing with emotions. It's not fun feeling the emotions come up. It's so much easier to take a shot, take a
Yeah.
hit, anything like that. Um, so yeah, that's mainly what, I experimented with some other stuff too, just because I was in college.
Yeah.
Nothing too crazy as far as drugs, but it was mainly like the weed. That was mainly the thing that held me back. And I say held me back because I didn't realize what I was doing it for.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't want to talk to anyone because I was super awkward because I was super high, and that didn't serve me at all. But I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's the key right there. You don't know what you don't know for sure. So yeah, so I mean, I know you got out of college and you kind of moved into, your early adult life and you started, working and doing things like that. Talk to me a little bit about like what struggles you experienced as a result of not addressing some of these things that were coming up that you didn't realize were really actually like super, like really holding you back and hindering you in your life.
yeah, so I graduate college, and I remember in college I took a sales class, and I remember after I finished that class, I was like, I'm never doing sales again. Whatever job I have, it's not going to be sales. God has a
Literally
funny
been
way
in
of,
sales since I met you.
literally, yeah, it's all I've been in since I've graduated college, right? And so I'm very grateful that my first job was in sales, and really the way it held me back the most, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is it held me back from I realized that I would get good at things, but not great.
Mm,
Like I never played when I was younger. I never really played basketball until I moved in with my aunt and uncle in fifth grade, and here all these kids were in like travel ball at fifth grade when I moved into Orange County.
yeah.
And so I just started playing basketball. But when I first learned, like it would be raining, and I'd be like, I'm gonna go play basketball because I know if I can make baskets in the rain, then I'm gonna be better than them. And I would practice every single day in the backyard. Once I got good, then I was kind of like, cool, I could chill, put my feet up and relax. Same thing with BMX. I'd get good to where I could jump, but not take it to the next level. Same thing with when it came to academics. I'd A's, a couple A's, mainly B's, and a couple C's to really level that out and make sure I stayed average. So
Yeah.
what I did through that time, and I didn't know it, is I created my thermostat. And that thermostat was, you are just above average, just above average. And
Yeah.
even in football, I did the same thing too. Like I could have practiced more. I could have done these different things that I just got good. Once I got good, then okay, I wasn't like the lower end of the totem pole. I wasn't the high end. I was like right there in the middle.
Mhm.
And the same thing with sales. I had this perfect opportunity to really develop myself in my first um, job after college, and I got good, but then I stayed good. And it was my way, now that I know, of being right. That all you are is average, Justin. You're just over average. And that's probably been the biggest thing that has really held me back. And that held me back it's still something I'm battling now.
Yeah.
I would always say, I always kind of feel that I'm at like, before, I'd say probably up until like the past year, I was performing at like 60% of my potential.
Yeah.
Now I'm starting to break through that because I'm aware of it, but I wasn't aware of that before.
Totally.
And then and then here's kind of like the domino effect, right? Because I was only performing at that level just above average, knowing that there was like a big gap, but I wasn't going for it, then I would beat myself up. And then I would beat myself up. And while I was beating myself up, then that lowered my standard. And then I got to be right again. And
Yeah.
then it just created, if you ever seen a dog chase its tail, it just created this circle and it ate me up. And then because it ate me up, then I would, sin. And if I would sin, then I would feel even more bad about myself. And it just like continued to just
Yeah.
wreak havoc in my emotional um, being,
Yeah. And I think
just never being good enough.
that's a good thing to like remind listeners about too. I mean, I'd like to obviously kind of put little place markers for people during the episode to like, hey, like look at something in your life that you do that is to prove yourself right about it, something that you already believe. I mean, because for you it was like this like average, or I'm not I forgot exactly how you word it. It's like I'm not good enough, kind of mindset, right? I'm average. I'm not great,
Just
but
above average.
yeah, just above average. But then for some people it might be like that I'm not lovable, so you'll self sabotage every relationship that you ever have. For some people it's like the I'm not good enough, so you'll purposely. And I'll speak from my own personal experience. Like I've done that in my relationships. I've struggled immensely with that. Like I'm not good enough. I'm not. I'm not worthy of love. So I'll self sabotage in my relationship, and play small. So I let my partner down. So then she'll obviously be disappointed in my inability to step into my potential. And then I can be right about what a loser piece of shit I am, and I can do
Yeah.
that in so many different ways. I mean, a big part of that was, with my addiction as well. So, I think, you touched on it, and a lot of people could probably take something away. Look at where your thermostat is, as Justin put it. Everybody has this thermostat, and you spoke a lot about this in the last year, where we'll set it at, let's say 80% or whatever, and whatever 80% looks like for you, it looks different for everybody. Some people that could be a totally different level. Your thermostat is your thermostat, and when I set it at 80%. There are times where I will exceed that, but because it's a thermostat, just like in your house, when you get a little too warm,
Come back down.
Yeah, it will cool you off, right? And make sure that you stay at that throttled level. So, I invite everybody to reflect on that, and and really take away from this conversation that he's having, because I think that's one of the biggest things that we can focus on in our life, is looking at where are we setting ourselves, like where are we setting that thermostat at, and why, because that's where awareness starts. Why is my thermostat set there? What's scary about 100%? Like, what is so terrifying, or what is it that I'm telling myself I can't do or can't be by being at that point? So, thank you for touching on that, because I think that's a big aha moment when you truly let yourself have it. Because I remember a mentor of mine said, for me personally, she said, when you're alone, your ego has won. And with that, what she was telling me was, my thing was, I'm not good enough. I'm never going to be good enough. I'm not lovable. I'm not worthy of love. That was like the narrative that I was creating in my mind, the story I was creating in my mind. And she said, dude, when you're alone, like when you're isolated, your ego has won, because it has been right that you ain't worthy of being around or being in relationship with people and having the things that you want to have. So you're just going to be on your ass by yourself. And that's how you know the ego won.
100%. And there's been times, through coaching, fast forward when I got into coaching and I really started supporting people in that way after dealing with my own stuff, thanks to you and the rest of the people that helped me through that. I'd talk to people and they'd be like, especially if they're looking for a significant other, I don't want to be alone. You're not alone. Like, you're with yourself.
Yeah.
There's a period where like I would literally take myself to the movies. I remember the first movie I ever saw by myself. The whole movie, I was like sweating because I was like, I hope no one knows I'm by myself. Oh wait, but like I'm sitting by myself, right? Then I'd take myself to lunch by myself. Like I would just do things by myself, because I got to know, who is Justin? Who am I?
Yeah.
And so many people don't do that. Like, try this today.
And get to observe your behavior while you're sitting am I like checking out on my phone? Can I sit silently with myself? Am I interacting with the waiter or waitress at the lunch by myself? Or am I just like ordering and just trying to get through the process? Like, am I uncomfortable being with me? Yeah. I've had that experience a few times.
Yeah. And so I invite anyone to try this, is like, go sit on a bench or sit on your couch, no TV, no phone, for 10 minutes. Just sit there. Like, and if you realize it, like, that shouldn't be something that's so uncomfortable, but I guarantee you, just like myself, like I didn't even think about that. I'm like, well, 10 minutes is a long time not to look at my phone, not to turn on the TV, check Sports Center, something like that, right? But no wonder why so many people, myself included, had so many challenges with ourselves, is because I didn't take the time to actually be in relationship with myself.
Yeah.
Like, Justin, what is it like to be in relationship with you? And then like, that's something I would write down. I would journal what it's like to be in relationship with me, romantically, platonically, in business. And then once I got clear what it was like to be in relationship, I got to look at that. And I was like, oh man, let's change this. Let's shift this. I like that, and then I got to one of my favorite things that Tony Robbins says is, I created this motherfucker. And that's what every single human being has the opportunity to do, is you can create you. You don't have to be where you're at right now. Where you're at right now is simply who you have been in the past.
Yeah.
And that's created who you are right now. And that's totally okay. It's not about who you've been, it's who you are being. And so if you can take the present moment, which is all we have, we never can be in the past. If you can take the present moment and grab who you want to be in the future, how does that person act? How do they speak? How do they walk into a room? How do they connect with others? Whatever it may be. How do they show up at work? How do they love their partner? All these different things. You take that 10 out of 10 person in the future of who you want to be, the ideal, just badass self,
Mm-hmm.
and then you think about how they would act in a certain situation now in the present, that's how you start becoming who you want to be. But the problem is, where I struggled and where so many other people struggle that I've seen, is that they reflect on the past and they're like, well, when this has happened, this has happened. So this is going to happen again.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you do that, you're just shooting yourself in not just one foot, but both feet.
Yeah.
Right. And then all you're going to do is recreate that. Our thought process, we have the thought, then we have the feeling, and then we have the behavior. I usually draw like a triangle, so that's why I'm using my face, right? So oftentimes when I feel a feeling come up, feelings are just they're just a compass for us. I don't think depression is real. I think it's a feeling. Like, don't get me wrong, people get depressed, but it is a feeling. That means you're human. Like, I've been depressed, but I've also been happy. Right. And so that feeling, all it is indicating that something is off. It's like if you have a car and your check engine light's on, it's letting you know that something's off. You have the choice of grabbing a piece of paper and covering that check engine light and continue to drive if you want, or you have the opportunity to go take it to a mechanic, go to a therapist, go get a coach, go do some inner work and realize what is coming up that's having the feeling of depression coming up, that's having the feeling of regret coming up, or having the feeling of anger coming up.
Yeah.
Anger was a huge emotion that would always come up for me. I would punch holes in the walls in college. I would want to get in fights. I spent a night in jail because I got in a fight with not really a fight, like I had no chance because I was hammered, but I got into a little scuffle with a bouncer because I was drunk and being stupid. But I had so much anger in me that I just had to get it out. And so what I realized was that was just a lot of stuff that I hadn't dealt with, I hadn't looked at. And
it's funny,
I got the shift.
As you're talking about that, this like physical representation of you talking about your garage as a kid is like coming up in my brain. Like the longer this thing goes untouched, unworked on, unresolved, the worse it gets when you peel that first layer back, right? It's gonna make you just want to put it down and not deal with it. It's like, oh God, fuck that. I'm good. But the reality is the more, the longer something goes undealt with, the scarier it is to look at. It's just like, I'll speak from my physical representation of it. The longer I didn't pay my taxes, the scarier it was to call the IRS and sort that shit out. It's the same with everything in your life. The longer you go on, not taking care of your health, not taking care of your mindset, your well-being, your finances, your business, your personal relationships, whatever, the scarier it is. And when you first open that door of willingness, it's an ugly sight, and you want to snap it back shut, really quickly. And I think like that's really where looking at, like you said, not taking what has happened as what it's always going to be and as like a compass of like, that's what I don't want it to be. And now I get to redirect it to where I'm headed and where I truly want to be, and just using that as fuel and as a compass so you can, create the results that you want in your life. Nothing has to happen in vain,
It doesn't at all. And if it is, if you're noticing that things are coming up and you're going into self beat up, like something I know I've shared with you and many other people is, and I learned this from doing it with myself because I beat myself up more than anyone else, is Justin, you get to be curious rather than critical. So when I would have that feeling come up, okay, why are you feeling depressed right now, Justin? Well, this is going on and that's going on. Okay, what about it? Like, is that true? Whatever you're thinking. One of my favorite things, I'll just give this to listeners as well. Byron Katie, there's a book called The Work. Absolutely phenomenal. These 4 questions you ask yourself. I would ask these questions 25 times a day to myself when I first learned about them. Number 1, is it true? So for me, a big thing was I'm a failure. Okay, is that true? Well, sometimes I feel like a failure and I failed at this and I feel like that. Second question, is it absolutely true, like 100% fact? Well, no, not 100% fact. Okay, and then who are you when you believe this thought? Low energy, I'm in my head, I'm anxious, I'm beating myself up. Okay, who are you without the thought? The thought doesn't even exist. Like, and I'll say this, I'll be coaching people and I literally on the phone, I can hear them. well, I'm like, exactly. Look at that.
Yeah.
Nothing changed. You just released the thought. And then I add a fifth question. That fifth question is, um, what is a thought that serves you?
Yeah.
Okay, I've failed at a few things, but I've learned this and I learned that and I learned this. Like the gifts that I have to share, like I know I'm a good coach. I know I can support people, and that's not coming from a cocky, arrogant way. That's coming from like, I've dealt with some crap. I've been in like the worst feeling possible. Like I've never like, you know, planned how I was going to do it, but I've thought of suicide. Like maybe this isn't worth it, you know? And so
Yeah.
I've had to like get myself out of that state and figure out how to deal with that. And I've felt that. And it's not fun and it's not easy. But, you know, I said this to one of our team members, you know, a couple days ago. I was like, being broke's hard, but so is doing the stuff, or being broke's hard. Doing the uncomfortable stuff is hard. Choose your hard.
Yeah.
Right.
And some would
And
argue that being broken, taking the easy path is, or the more comfortable path is actually harder than doing the work to create the. But it's just up to you
I
and
would
your
say it
perspective.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I get myself to move right now. I mean, I have something that's right here on top of my computer. It says life is easy when you do the hard things. Life is hard when you do the easy things.
Yeah.
And so whenever I don't want to do something, I'll ask myself, okay, Justin, if you don't do this, here's probably going to be the outcome because you've gone through this before. But if you do this, the thing that you don't want to do, here's what's possible.
Yeah.
So Justin, how would you feel? I'm literally like coaching myself. How would you feel if that did happen, the thing that you want to happen? Oh, I'd feel good. You know, it's like with abs. If someone's not working out their abs, when you're trying to do crunches and all ab workouts and you haven't done them in a while, it's the worst. It's probably one of the worst things ever because I'll feel bloated. I'll feel like I'm not even doing it right. I can see my rolls just like crunching all over. Right. And so, and it hurts. It hurts to walk. It hurts to talk and everything the next couple of days. But if I think of like how treacherous that workout's going to be and how difficult it's going to be, that's not going to get me motivated.
Yeah.
But if I think about what is it going to feel like in 4 to 6 months when I go to the beach and I take off my shirt and I love the way that I look, or I look in the mirror after I get out of the shower and I love the way I look, or I go to pick something up and my back doesn't go out on me, you know, like how would that feel? And then that's what gets me to take the motivation and be inspired to do that. So it's kind of got to trick yourself into that, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think it's, you know, everything in life comes back to like looking at like what is the desired result. You know, I mean that's the reality. But sometimes our judgment or our you know, feelings, as you said, about ourselves can be so strong because it hasn't been dealt with for an extended period of time. Even the thought of, like you said, like my back not hurting. Some people might be like, the thought of a six pack just seems unattainable to me. Okay, well, cool. Then don't make that your goal. Just make it like, how will it feel to wake up and roll out of bed and not feel like, I got hit by a car while I was sleeping, or whatever the feeling is, that you're struggling with on a daily basis. I know, for me, like when I got sober, the thought of being sober, like the first time I went to a meeting when I was like in my first week or two, and somebody was like, oh yeah, I've got, 17 years of sobriety or whatever. I was like, yeah, right. Like in my mind, I was just like, the thought of being sober for that long, like was unattainable in my brain. And, so I just kept going back, and like, by the grace of God, in 2 months, I'll have 8 years sober. You know what I mean? So like, it was just, when you start something, a baby has to crawl before it can learn how to walk. Right. And the same thing goes with you, because if there's anything that you are doing in your life and it's scary to you, it's new, it's uncharted territory, like you have to crawl before you can walk, before you can run, right? The people that are
100%.
inspiring you to crawl, to learn how to walk, to eventually run, have gone through those processes already. So don't expect yourself to be where, somebody who's been doing the thing that you're trying to do for 10 years, you're not going to be there. Some might jump into it a lot faster than others, but the majority won't, and that's okay. And you don't have to beat yourself up over that. And I know for myself, that's been one of the hurdles that I've had to struggle with, is expecting myself to play at a level that is superior to what would be, expected when you are just stepping into something or have only been doing it for a few months. And then what I've done inevitably in the past is I give up on myself, and then I beat myself up and I run through that story pattern that we were talking about earlier, and I make myself right. It's like you said earlier, that average story. It's like, oh, like I just did enough, and then it got uncomfortable, and then I was just like, all right, you know what, fuck it, like I guess I'm just not supposed to do this. Like I'm gonna move on to something else, and then I put that thing down, and I lose all the momentum I had, of that journey that I was on, and all the benefits that not only I could have gained, but that I could have provided with others through walking through that experience. So
Yeah. And that's the challenging part, right? Is like, going back to, I would never know because I haven't done, methamphetamines. And I've heard that's like one of the hardest things to get off of. Right. And so I'm sure the hardest time for you was that time, the very first time that you were sober. And I would assume, and the feeling came up that you wanted to do it, but you had already made the decision that like, no, you were done with that. Right.
yeah.
That was probably the number one hardest, most difficult time. I remember doing the 75 hard. Like that was, I kept thinking like, oh, I can eat whatever. Oh, I don't have to work out today. And that was the hardest point because I was like, I was shifting my old identity. Identity is everything. When you change your identity, you will change your whole life. And my identity for the longest, like, that was ingrained, that was in my subconscious that I wasn't even conscious of, was that I'm not good enough. Like I can't tell you how many times I've gotten like this close to having a 6-pack, and then I get like really close. I like the way I'm looking in the mirror and everything, and then I sabotage it. So many times. Like I noticed it this last time with the 75 hard. I finished it, and I just noticed how I started like, oh, I can eat whatever I want. I just started going crazy, and then I was like, whoa, Justin, we've been here. You've seen this movie. Exactly. We've seen this movie. We know how it ends. Let's make a new movie, right? Yeah. Like one of my favorite things that Joe Rogan, you can search "Hero of Your Own Story" on YouTube. Joe Rogan talks about you are the hero of your own story. So if you're going through a difficult time right now, pretend you are that hero. This is like every single movie, right? The movie goes, and then eventually like the hero's struggling, and then they break through, and then finally they're the hero. Like, but they weren't the hero of the whole movie, right? There was the plot and the plot twist and everything that came with that. And so if you're going through a difficult time right now, pretend that your life is a movie. Pretend that someone's following you out with a camera and you're done being who you've been in the past. And now you get to think about who is that hero and start being that now.
Yeah.
But it's going to be like, it's going to suck before it gets better.
Yeah.
But it does get better.
Yeah.
And what was so difficult is I got comfortable being uncomfortable. I got comfortable being average, right? And so the most difficult thing for me to do was to stay uncomfortable, to start getting comfortable being uncomfortable. Like in college, I snowboarded 3 times a week. I also did in high school as well. And I'm goofy. When I went with a girl I was dating and the mountain was wide open and she wasn't very good, I was like, I'm going to go down the mountain switch like all day. And I did it for like 10 minutes. Like, this stinks. Like, everyone's looking at me. They probably think I don't know how to snowboard yet. I can go off the jumps. I can hit some boxes and all this other kind of stuff. Like, my ego was just going crazy. I was like, no, you're going to go switch the whole day. And so badly I wanted to change and just make it easy because it was easy. I knew I can get down the mountain fast, hit jumps, carve, all that kind of stuff. But if I was going the opposite way that I was uncomfortable with, I didn't like it. I wanted it to change. You can do a simple thing that's super easy, won't hurt you at all. Brush your teeth with your opposite hand. Do that. Yeah. It literally can change your whole life. There's just these little tweaks, again, like little tweaks that you can implement in your life. And the more uncomfortable you are and the more comfortable you get being uncomfortable, cold showers is another one I do. Like, I don't do cold showers because I love them. I definitely didn't like them at the beginning. I definitely didn't like them in the winter. I definitely didn't like them when I was in Colorado. However, I do like who I have become and who I am becoming, because now I have more confidence in myself. Now I have more self-worth. Now I have more I believe in myself, because many times and for 75 days straight, I did what I said I was going to do. Yeah. Even if it was working out, my second workout at 11:15, drinking a half a gallon at 11:30, staying up all night because I was going to the restroom. I didn't make that same mistake. But it's so worth it. Yep. And it may not seem worth it, just like you were saying with that gentleman who is 17 years sober. When you're in the state of just like barely switching, you may see someone who's where you want to be, but you're like, I don't know if I fully want like what they want. But believe me, you're thinking about that and seeing that from a different lens.
Mm-hmm.
When you see that from the lens that they're at, you have a different pair of glasses on, and it's a totally different place. And I say that just because you want to, you know, when we don't do things, we build a mountain. And this mountain we can look at for so long and we'll just stare at it and like, I don't know if I want to go up this mountain. Like, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. But the only way to go up the mountain is step by step by step, right?
Yeah.
And sure, every now and then, luck, laboring under correct knowledge, which I believe is like you're just doing the thing, and you'll have some lucky things thrown your way. And then all of a sudden, you get a big jump up the mountain, or maybe the mountain comes down a little bit. But that won't happen unless you're taking the steps. I truly believe this, to start changing that and start changing yourself. And I mean, you're either gonna, like, this is what I was thinking about the other day. I was like, or not the other day, this was a couple of years ago. I was like, Justin, if you wanted to stay average, then stay average and be happy with it. And if you're totally, like, sincerely, if you're totally cool, if you're listening to this and like, I'm average, but I'm happy with it, cool, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
If you're average and if your life is crap right now and you're not happy with your life is, either get happy with that how it is and stop complaining, or do something about it. And the reason why I'm saying that, this is me putting my nice guy to the side, is like, why stay in the middle? And for so long I was in the middle, and the middle freaking sucks. Yeah. When you're on this teeter-totter, you're like, do I want to stay the same? Do I want to get better? Do I want to stay the same? Do I want to get better? It's like, just choose.
And that's where
decide.
Deciding who you keep in your life too at that decision point will also determine a lot. Because like, if you're surrounding yourself with a bunch of people who are okay being mediocre, like you're surrounding yourself with a bunch of people who are not leaders, and then you genuinely and authentically want to become a leader or want to embody leadership in your life and take your life to the next level, if you're hanging out with these people who are not living up to that, potential and are happy and content doing that, you're never going to get to where you need to go. So you need to surround yourself.
It's going to be so difficult.
Yeah. You need to surround yourself with people who are going to take you on, like you said, and really create the space for you to like live in your fullest potential. Because if you don't, like, you're not going to have anything to live up to, and, I can relate to that simply from addiction, but then that's also occurred multiple times in my recovery, right? It's like people are not vibrating on the same frequency that I want to be on, but it's attractive. It's like this like weird toxic thing that's very easy to get addicted to, is mediocrity, because it's comfortable, as you said. And I think, one of the most unfortunate human conditions is, being addicted to comfort and, wanting to, like you said, if you do the easy things in your life will be hard. If you do the hard things, your life will be easy. It's easy to do the easy things, I mean, that's why it is that way, so really paying attention to, like, what actions am I taking on a daily basis and getting used to uncomfortable and having, that's why they talk about accountability, I mean, every day I check in some way, shape, or form with myself or another person. And on the days I don't, it is evident how hard my day is. Sending a text message at 6:00 in the morning of like, hey, these are the struggles I know are going to come up for me today, and this is the opposite contrary action I need to take in order to overcome those things. Just something that simple can change the outcome of my day, like, dramatically.
Yeah.
Because
it's 1% better than you were before.
Yeah.
And just like you were saying earlier with like the 17 years, and you were like, well, you were kind of questioning yourself.
Yeah.
Like we overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a decade. So just the 1% better every single day. Like, don't try and be a hero in 24 hours, because it just won't happen. And the tough part is we live in like such an instant gratification place. Like, we can literally have whatever we want delivered to us, especially with Prime. Like, I ordered a book today. It's probably at my doorstep already.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can order some food right now and it can be delivered right here. I want to go meet up with a girl. I can go on an app and swipe,
Yeah.
Like, everything is so instant. And because it's instant, we're comfortable, rather than like, I'm single right now. I deleted all my dating apps. Why? Because I realized that I wasn't actually going up to women when I saw them out in person that I wanted to go talk to. So life will present you with people and circumstances to show you where you aren't free. So I saw that and I was like, all right, Justin, you don't want to do that. You're going to do that.
Yeah.
All right, Justin, you don't want to take a cold shower. You're going to do that. Yesterday, all right, Justin, you don't want to go for a run? We're going for a run. And the more you do these things that you don't want to do, like I'm telling you, I promise you, you will build so much more confidence within yourself. And when you build confidence, it compounds. And for so long, I had the ball rolling down the wrong side of the hill and it gained so much momentum. Eventually, I had to stop it. And that was a difficult time, right? Stopping it. And then I had to start pushing it back up that hill. But man, once you get on the other side of the hill to the momentum that you want, the momentum that you desire, the momentum that you know you get to have, that's when things become exciting. That's when things become fun. And don't think that you're going to be going down the mountain. You might not hit a rock and might need to, or hit a log and might not need to move your rock, right? But the cool part is you built so much momentum is that when you do hit that log and the rock slows down or the rock stops, you know exactly how to get that rock going again.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I was talking about earlier when you have different lenses on.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing that stops people.
Yeah. And when you say it compounds, like it's not linear, like growth is not like this, it's not, even though your actions may be like this, like you will see massive spikes in like your mindset and your confidence. When you look back, that might not be the case, when you go, 20 years but I know there's been days where I woke up and I've just done like the next right indicated step for like a week or 2 weeks straight. And I'm like, holy shit, I feel so much dramatically different than I did 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean? And like 2 weeks ago, I thought my life was ending and I had no answers. And like now just by doing one thing different every day for 2 weeks, like my life is dramatically different, like immeasurable, So yeah, those things do definitely compound. Yeah, man, I just want to, I kind of want to start wrapping things up here with you, but how I would like to kind of wrap this up is, I know we really dove into, the transformational work and the things that you are implementing in your life. So, I know for myself that like, if I could go back in time and change anything in my life, it wouldn't be so much what I change anything about what I did, who I was, what I experienced, any of that stuff. So that's not my intention of asking you to do this, but is there anything that you can provide the listeners with, like something that you live your life by now that, they can implement so they could step into the next phase of their life with confidence and, creating being the author of their life and, just any insight like that you live by now in light of the experiences that you've had to support, the listeners.
Yeah. There's a lot that comes to my mind.
I figured. He's always got the nuggets, Justin.
I do got the nuggets, and this might trigger someone, and I'm okay with it because, like I said, I kicked my nice guy to the curb, right? And no, I mean this with my heart, and no, I mean this from a good place. And this is going to be for whoever gets to hear it. And it's stop being a little bitch. And what I mean by that is like, I realized how much of a little bitch I was being. Like I realized the stuff that would like piss me off or make me feel depressed or make me feel unworthy or whatever it may be, didn't, in the grand scheme of things, didn't matter. If you get to have help with this, read A Man's Search for Meaning. It's about Viktor Frankl, who went through the Holocaust. And he was free the whole time in his mind and survived the Holocaust because he chose to be free. And he did that through doing the hard things. And when I mean bitch, what I mean is like, stop being a little wimp. Like there's a better way to say it. That's what I want to say. Stop being a little wimp. If you want some more motivation, listen to, or if you want some more support with this, listen to, oh my gosh, Nick Vujicic, a man born with no arms, no legs. Yet he is speaking to millions of people all over the world, helping children not commit suicide because that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And he's learning how to swim. He's learning how to walk, run, play soccer with no limbs. And here I am with every single limb complete. I can see, I can hear everything, like, and I take it for granted. And so maybe take away, don't be a little bitch. Don't be a wimp. Like just do what you get to do. Understand it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
But because of how difficult it is, it's going to make it that much better.
Yeah.
Like the reason I was talking about a 6-pack and the reason why people are like, I mean, deep down, everyone who doesn't want a 6-pack, right? It's the matter of, I don't want a 6-pack because I know what that's going to take. And that's why we admire it. Who doesn't want a successful business? Who doesn't want a successful relationship, who doesn't want a successful friendship. But those things take work, and it's not always fun. And for the longest time, I was being a little wimp.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that's because I didn't have a strong father figure in my life
Mm-hmm.
to teach me how to step into that manhood, and for mothers, teaching you how to step into, or women, teaching you how to step into that womanhood,
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it may be. And you get to step into that. You are God's highest form of creation. You are made in the image of the Most High. Your identity is in that, and you get to own that and know that you are so unconditionally loved, regardless of what you've gone through. If I don't want to get too biblical on here, but look in the Bible. Who did Jesus work with? He didn't work with the good-looking people. He didn't work with the people that were saints. He worked with the prostitutes, the tax collectors, the murderers, right? All of those people. So know that you are so worthy. Know that you are so loved. Know that whatever you want to create in this life is possible. But you got to stop being a little wimp. You got to forgive yourself. You got to move in the right direction and make it happen. You literally only live once. I'd really love to do a second, because we just started getting into like the coaching part of it.
And we
so
can.
if you guys would like to hear a second one, let James know. But I've had 3 situations where I should not be here: 2 car accidents and a shooting that was right in front of me. And those moments like those really remind you. I know YOLO's thrown around as kind of like a joke, YOLO, right? But no, it's serious. Like, you literally only have one life. And so how are you going to live it? And you don't want to look back. I've looked back at some of the things in my life that I regret. Yes, it happened for me, but I'm like, I don't want to regret that in the future. So I get to change that now. So don't be a little wimp. And if that triggers you, there's something there for you.
Yeah. Well, and I think the powerful language, I know for myself speaking, like there's, when you use powerful language, I mean, I cuss like a sailor. So, I mean, that's one thing. But I think there is a lot to be said about, like just being honest with yourself. Because like inside that, people can identify that if they're being honest with themselves. You don't need to sugarcoat it. It is what it is. So, yeah, dude, thank you so much, Justin, for and I would love to do a part 2 with you, man, just because I know we can. I mean, we were joking around. We're like, we have 45-minute conversations, and we're like, oh, dang, we've been on the phone for an hour. That's the huge, but I just can't thank you enough for your transparency and your honesty, and just really giving the audience an inside look at, like, it doesn't matter what the early years of your life look like. You know what I mean? I mean, none of that shit matters in regards to what your potential is. You get to use that stuff as an opportunity to grow and learn and say, hey, I want more for myself. I want more for my children, my relationships, and those types of things than what I may have had. But it doesn't define who I am. It has just been one of the many building blocks that has created, this opportunity for me to stand upon and stand as a more powerful individual in my life. So thank you, man. I can't.
Yep. And if someone in the same situation has done it, or someone in a worse situation than you has done it, so can you.
Yeah.
And so I just want to acknowledge you, James, for creating this podcast and putting this content out there, because I know exactly where it comes from. And it comes from that big old heart of yours. And I know so many people are going to be, I've already seen it, over social media, how many people are listening to it and how it's opening up for them. So continue to do that, man.
Thanks, brother.
I love it. Love who you be for this world. And, if it wasn't for our backgrounds, we wouldn't be sharing what we are right now to help that one person. So
100%.
Know that your background is what makes you.
Absolutely, brother. Speaking of social media, how do people find you on social media?
Yeah, I'm Justin Croskery, Croskery, pretty much on all social media. Instagram. I've been loving Threads. I've been going pretty hard from my Don't Be a Little Wimp on Threads. So if you're looking for a little verbal butt kicking to read, check that out. Facebook, I'm on there as well. And reach out. If this landed for you, if this supported you at all, those are things I love and live for. No dollar amount could ever make me feel the same way I feel when someone's like, okay, this spoke to me.
Yeah.
And if you could have any support, reach out to myself, reach out to James. We both, that's what we live for, is helping people. Otherwise he wouldn't be doing this and I wouldn't be on it.
Yeah. There's definitely way better things I could be doing on an afternoon years ago than recording a podcast talking about bettering yourself, until I realized that is exactly what I want to be doing on an afternoon. You know what I mean?
100%.
I would have been like, man, who wants to sit down and talk about that shit for an hour? So, Justin, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. And, I'll all of his handles and all that good stuff will be in the bio as always. But Justin, I look forward to doing part 2 sometime, soon.
Let's do it, brother.
I appreciate you, man.
Peace.